Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Earth Day Everyday podcast, where we aim to spotlight exemplary activists, policymakers, and changemakers in the field of sustainability and climate change. I'm your host, Aryan Doshi, and today we are extremely lucky to be joined by Harald. Harald is the CEO and founder of Green Leadership, a LinkedIn Top Voice contributor, and a true pioneer of the circular economy, inspiring nearly 111 million people, among so many other things. Harold, it is a true honor and privilege to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having time.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, right? I mean, you have this incredible amount of experience, right, building this movement around circularity, and spreading awareness and the word about it. And when I talk to people about the circular economy, right, everyone has this different vision and this different story that caused them to take the trajectory that they're on today. And so before we even get started, I mean, for you, when was that moment when you knew this was something that you wanted to be a part of?
Yeah, it was coming after a big journey where I had worked on the one hand as CEO of companies, and I was advising the deputy prime minister of my own country. So I was in politics, a fascinating part of my story as well. And then I also led and started NGOs and impact organizations. And what always kind of drove me bananas was everybody was working in their silos. So when you're in government, you focus on government, you're blaming maybe the others. As a business, you
Yeah,
blame government because they are too slow. And as consumers, we often blame everybody else while we have a big role to play. And the circular economy for me was something that came as a concept into life and has become a way of living because I am truly interested in moving the whole system forward. We're all connected, we often say, right? We
yeah,
go to nature, we can feel that when we're sitting in a circle with our friends and have dinner. We know
absolutely.
it's not about us alone. And circularity, the circular economy for the first time was it brought it back to the core of how we run our households, how we
Yeah,
run our companies and our countries, I think, to understand that it's all connected and that we should not only produce waste and act at the expense of somebody else, but
absolutely.
respect that interdependence
Yeah.
and also act upon it. And I think circular economy and the regeneration around it is really a very valuable and clear concept how to do that.
Yeah, and I think the way you talked about circularity with this sense of interconnectedness and unity, right? It really brings the best in everyone because I was watching one of your TEDx videos. You talked about like sharing and community, right? And that's what the circular economy really does. But I think today there's still this misconception around circularity that, it's niche, it's infeasible, and it lacks practicality. But I mean, like you've said, and like others have said, right? Circularity can permeate through all facets of society. It can help the GDP. And so for you, how do you convey that message when you're talking, when you're trying to build this movement? How do you convey that message and sort of change that narrative?
Mm. I'm an economist by training, trained in Vienna, which is a big powerhouse for economics in the last 100 years. And also I'm a political scientist, where you look more at the environment and how policies are made. And honestly, the problem is mainstream economics.
Yeah.
So when we have to optimize for our own profit or the profit for a company, obviously you get this free rider principle. And free riding often means it's happening on the shoulders or at the detriment of nature
Yeah.
or of us people living in society together, which you call pollution.
Yeah.
So it's not even a very difficult story to convey because anybody I speak to, a young person, a young innovator, a minister or a CEO, everybody will agree we have to think about this differently, but it is not mainstream to actually think in the interconnected way. And
Absolutely.
our systems, our economy is not set up for that. So I think it's something very human. And when you speak from human to human, like with you,
Yeah,
everybody would say, sure, I want to be non-wasteful. I want to take care of
absolutely.
each other. I want to contribute to a bigger vision of society.
Sure.
The problem in that the financial system has been incentivizing individualistic behavior. And this we have to rethink. And
Yeah.
sometimes imagine you are going into a sandbox
Yeah.
and one child is kicking everybody out of the sandbox. this is how we at the moment behaving. But when you put 3, 4 children in the same sandbox that are kind of want to play together with, it's
Yeah,
possible. There is enough
absolutely.
clarity for everybody. It's just ensuring again that the rules of the game are providing such a space in a safe way.
Sure. And I think the way you sort of talk about circularity, like um in the memory of kids like playing in a sandbox, right? I think people forget that sort of message about circularity, that it's about unity, right? And going away from individualistic mindset. And so there's that sense of community and togetherness that I think we also need to remember that circularity fosters. And I know like you were talking about waste, right? And I think, recently we've seen a lot of creative applications where, we take one product, and that one product, rather than having it end up in the landfill, we find a way to convert it so that it's reintegrated back into the economy in some way, shape, or form, right? And so there's so many different applications of that, from food, right, clothing, even trees and urban forests, right? They all have some sense of circularity to them. But in your opinion, I guess more of a fun question, like what is the most creative application of circularity that you've seen?
I loved when where I live in Holland here, they started to come up with a library,
Yeah.
not only for books, but a library for clothes.
Wow.
You
Yeah,
have like, I think that's a very beautiful example of can we share our clothes, if it's happening in a
absolutely.
in
Yeah,
a, in a clean way. Is there something I need to own, or is it something I can share with others? I think that's
absolutely. Yeah.
that's what I love as a concept, to move away from I need to have everything.
Sure,
But
sure.
yes, I can cover my needs in different ways. I think
Yeah,
that is a good example. Do I need to own something, or can I actually just have
absolutely. Just rent it.
it?
Yeah. Wow. Library of clothing. I think if we just sort of put those thoughts, those ideas in more mainstream media today, I think we'll get even more traction than we already have been getting, because those ideas are so powerful. And I think one thing you talk about, right, in where you're living in Holland, right, they have a much more pro-circularity environment. And like in general, a lot of Scandinavian countries, a lot of European countries like Copenhagen, Sweden, or Denmark, Sweden, Finland, they have a lot more policy that's regulated towards implementing circularity and focusing on the environment. Whereas in other countries, say like the United States, it's not really geared towards a pro-circularity sort of mindset. And so, how do other countries sort of adopt the policies and the ways that we've been seeing in Scandinavian countries?
I think one is a mindset question, I think, right? My parents still grew up in the Second World War, so it's not so far away what has
Yeah.
happened also in now a rich country like where I'm from, Austria. There is a past that is not so long back, which has looked
Yeah.
very different, where they continuously remind me of in their times nothing was wasted. And I think that has changed so fast in the last 60, 70 years. You have the whole debate. I think, is circular economy a topic only for rich countries, which I think it
Yeah.
is not, because in many emerging economies, on the one hand, people are taking much better care of each other. There is more also labor, which is more affordable. So labor-intensive processes can be carried out more effectively and efficiently. And at the same time, you have there in the emerging economies sometimes not such a strong focus on nature protection yet, but it's
Yeah.
it's emerging. So I would say everywhere in the world, I see incredible things everybody else can learn from each other. It's a mindset question that looks
Yeah.
away from wasteful behavior to more regenerative and protective behavior for the environment, especially, but also socially. And let's be also honest, it needs to be also balanced with the needs for people. When it's very a lot of poverty, obviously circularity and waste are not the first topic, it's survival. So I'm very mindful of that.
Sure.
But smart policy and smart regulation, and that's why India or China are very, very powerful examples where they call it maybe different. In China, they call it the way of a harmonious society,
Yeah.
it looks very much at protecting resources because there are not so many, and it's going to be the
Well,
main topic for the next 5 to 10 years.
sure,
How
sure.
can you provide and keep not only the scarce minerals for the IT revolution, no,
Yeah,
but any resource like water or air? How can we keep it clean and accessible for our
yeah,
people? So it's a topic everywhere, and it's going to come just much, much faster. And regulation will, I think, fill that gap soon. Because in any science fiction movie, where we are confronted with maybe a future where there's more conflict or where there is less minerals and less resources available,
absolutely.
these kind of topics are being thrown out as relevant. So it's going to come. Hopefully, we can address them before a big crisis is going to force us to do so.
Absolutely. And I think the way you sort of talk about it is that we need some sort of incentivization, right? To go from linear economy, take, make, waste to the circular economy, because the problem with linearity is it's been so ingrained into the minds of so many people that now transitioning from linear to circular is so problematic. And some corporations, some businesses, they go like maybe overboard with trying to do this. And in some sense, they end up, committing greenwashing, like making false claims about the products
Yeah.
that they actually manufacture, saying it was sustainably produced when in reality it wasn't. And so in your mind, like how do we sort of fix that problem from A, going linear to circular and creating incentive, and B, also ensuring that we don't have companies and corporations engaging in greenwashing?
A lot of big topics you're opening. Greenwashing, I just discussed it on the panel yesterday. I believe there's no full protection against greenwashing, right? So one big answer is always transparency, accountability. Any organization that is keeping up transparency is great. At the same time, I think us as human beings, it's a
Yeah,
decision what we want to engage in. And here I put a call out there, to the marketing managers and
yeah,
the managers of companies in C-level that maybe in the end of the day, the greenwashing will backfire anyway. So I think that I hope for that because we are becoming a very connected and educated
absolutely.
population. So this is my big hope that rising awareness and transparency and connectedness will call these kind of negative behaviors out. Now, what is the incentive? I don't think we need sure, great policy making is a fantastic
Yeah,
incentive to change. But I'll mention something that came to my mind is like a challenge I do for myself every single day, which is if I see something lying on the ground
yeah,
somewhere, and also where I live in Holland, it's not clean everywhere on the street. I make sure I stop and pick up
yeah,
that piece of. So
well,
if everybody who is listening today would
yeah,
make this their new habit for the next 365 days for 1 year,
yeah,
pick up all the trash you see, I think we could maybe enter into a big avalanche of taking care of our space around us because it starts with ourselves, and we're
yeah.
all human beings. You can then bring it into the company you work in or the company you lead or in the government you work in or the government you lead or the NGO you are part of,
Sure.
and then make sure this is kind of exponentially growing as a movement.
Yeah, and I know maybe just couple questions here because I know you have to go. I guess one thing I had also seen you talk about is this, I think you abbreviated as PIG, right? Problem of instant gratification. I know you've talked about it, right? And so I think that sort of relates to maybe today's world of consumer culture, right? Right, you were talking about where we have this tendency of wanting to keep buying, buying, buying. And then once we buy, then maybe some years later, we see how much waste we have in um, how much of it can actually go into the hands of another person, right? I like to say that we can alter the trajectory of so many products from landfill to human if we engage in circularity, right? But there is this sense of instant gratification that I think plagues so many countries around the world, especially as we see the wealth gap between the poor and the rich continue to become greater and greater. And so how do you sort of see us going about addressing this concept of pig instant problem of instant gratification in the near future?
I think everybody should sit down and think, does any consumerism, getting the next thing waiting for the next thing actually make him or her happy. And I think once you see it does not,
Yeah.
but the actually act of giving and connecting and trying to lead a better life is the way forward. In
Yeah.
that moment, we are less buying into that addiction. I think it can all stop. It's difficult to prescribe from outside.
Yeah. No, I think that that is so true, right? Because it has to come from within, especially when we're talking about this sort of climate movement, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it has to come from us wanting to do good for the planet, right? Like you were talking about, whether you see on the street picking up a piece of trash or even just the small things, because the chance of us being able to make this sort of global, widespread movement on an individual basis will likely be somewhat smaller, but we have to be okay that even a smaller impact, right? Even a small impact like picking up trash or bringing in a thermos rather than a plastic cup into the coffee shop, right? Is those small actions that if everyone does it, like you say, it's not just one person, but 365 days across the billions and billions of people, that's when you sort of have a tangible impact. So I think those words of wisdom really do ring true in today's world. I guess maybe more of like a fun question. I know you have to go is what sort of advice do you have for maybe the aspiring environmentalist, aspiring circular economist today, right? Because you've been able to have such a meaningful impact in this sector, in this world, and spreading this notion that circularity isn't just about environment, but it's about connecting the environment with the people and creating this sense of togetherness, this sense of sharing and collaboration. And you've been able to reach so many people and have that impact so that more people see it as a viable solution going down the line in the future. And for someone just entering the field, right, there's so many options, like you always talk about, like you always post about how you can get involved, how you can change one product to another product. And so for you, what advice do you have? Like, what sector do you join? How can you have a meaningful impact? How can someone have a meaningful impact like you've been able to have today and reach so many people?
No, that's very kind of you. I would say maybe two things. One is so you don't need to, nobody needs to be afraid because we're all students. We're
Yeah,
all circularity students.
yeah,
It's us reinventing and redesigning and together seeing how we can build a circular system that works for more people
yeah,
and for the planet and ourselves. So take
absolutely.
a student's mindset. So there's not a big I think there's another big blocker for you to enter.
Yeah,
And secondly, it's one of the biggest growing job opportunities of our times. The
wow.
businesses and the NGOs and also governments of this world are reorienting themselves. And I know it also because I'm advising the climate change negotiations. People are hungry for solutions.
Absolutely.
And circularity is a very strong solution kind of roadmap to
Ab-
go there. It's not the solution itself. It's like a continuously changing and evolving
Yeah,
paradigm that is going from the small climate agenda into the whole materiality of things. So how do we produce and use products? And I think it will definitely create, if you're interested, a great way of looking at in the world, but two, an opportunity for you also to have a meaningful job. And I think this is my biggest advice I would give to you and your listeners and viewers. And thank you so much for the work you're doing.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Harold, for taking the time. I know just how busy you are. So thank you so much for sharing your advice. I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people who are looking to join Circularity, but maybe aren't sure how they should proceed. So thank you so much, Harold, and thank you so much to our viewers. And we'll see you all on the next episode of Earth Day Every Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.